I've always been the guy who takes things too seriously. My therapist says it's because I use control as a coping mechanism, which honestly just made me take therapy too seriously. But nowhere was this more obvious than at the gym. I'd started boxing 6 months ago, not because I wanted to fight anyone, but because I needed to hit something that wouldn't break or judge me. Turns out, a heavy bag is cheaper than weekly therapy sessions, and the endorphins don't come with a copay. The gym was this old converted warehouse in South Brooklyn, the kind of place that smelled like decades of sweat and determination had soaked into the concrete floors. Every evening after work, I'd show up in my carefully matched athletic wear, everything black and perfectly coordinated, while everyone else looked like they'd grabbed whatever was clean. I kept my gloves pristine, my hand wraps rolled precisely, my water bottle filled to the exact same level. You get the picture. Control freak in a place designed for controlled violence. Then there was Marcus. I noticed him the first week, mainly because he was impossible not to notice. He had this presence, like he took up more space than his actual body occupied. He was maybe 6'1", with broad shoulders and these arms that looked like they'd been carved from mahogany. His hair was cut close, and he had this short beard that somehow made his smile even more devastating. And he smiled a lot, which seemed weird for a boxing gym where everyone else looked like they were working through some serious demons. Marcus was one of the advanced guys, the ones who sparred seriously in the ring, while beginners like me worked the bags and did drills. I'd watch him sometimes, pretending to rest between rounds. The way he moved was like watching water flow, everything smooth and connected, no wasted motion. He'd dance around his opponents, landing combinations that sounded like drum rolls against their headgear, and then he'd reset with this little bounce on his toes that made it look effortless. I'd been there about 2 months when Coach Dave told me it was time to start sparring. I immediately wanted to vomit. There's something different about hitting a bag versus hitting a person, even with all the protective gear. The bag doesn't hit back. The bag doesn't have eyes that watch you, waiting for you to drop your guard. My first few sessions were awkward disasters. I was too tense, too rigid, too in my head about doing everything perfectly. My partners would tap me almost apologetically, like they felt bad about following the basic premise of boxing. I'd go home with barely a bruise, but my ego was black and blue. Then, one Thursday evening, Coach Dave called me over. Marcus was standing next to him, already gloved up, that easy smile on his face. "Marcus is going to work with you today," Coach Dave said. "He's good at reading people, helping them find their rhythm." My stomach dropped. Marcus was way out of my league. This was like asking a high school basketball player to go one-on-one with LeBron. But you don't argue with Coach Dave, so I nodded and tried to look less terrified than I felt. We touched gloves in the center of the ring, and I immediately went into my defensive stance, tight and controlled. Marcus circled me slowly, and I kept turning to face him, my guard up high. "Relax a little," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "You're gonna burn out in 30 seconds like that." I tried to lower my shoulders, but relaxed wasn't really in my vocabulary. Marcus moved in, and I threw a tentative jab. He slipped it easily, but didn't counter, just reset and kept circling. "Again," he said, "put something behind it." I threw another jab, then a cross. Both missed, but I felt less apologetic about it. Marcus nodded encouragingly and finally threw a combination at me, a jab cross hook that I barely managed to block. But here's the thing, when his gloves connected with my guard, there was no real force behind them. He was pulling his punches, significantly. At first, I thought maybe he was just warming up, feeling me out. But as the round continued, the pattern became clear. Every time Marcus hit me, even when I left myself completely open, it was like being tapped by a pillow. Meanwhile, I could hear him in the other ring later that evening, sparring with another advanced guy, and the sound was completely different. Loud, sharp impacts. Real boxing. This continued over the next few weeks. I'd gotten to the point where Coach Dave regularly paired me with Marcus, and every single session was the same. Marcus would move beautifully, set up perfect combinations, land clean shots, and pull every single one at the last millisecond. With everyone else, I could see him in the corner of my eye during open gym time, and he was an absolute force. He'd make these guys, tough experienced fighters, back up and cover up. But with me, I might as well have been made of glass. It started to bother me, really bother me. Was I that pathetic? Did I seem that fragile? I'd signed up for boxing specifically because I was tired of being careful, tired of playing it safe. I wanted to be pushed. I wanted to find out what I could actually handle. But Marcus was treating me like I might shatter. After one particularly frustrating session, where he'd practically pantomimed a body shot without even making contact, I pulled off my gloves more aggressively than necessary. "Why do you do that?" The words came out sharper than I'd intended. Marcus was unwrapping his hands and he looked up, genuinely confused. "Do what?" "Pull every punch, with me, only with me." I gestured toward the other ring. "I've seen you spar with everyone else. You don't hold back like that with them." Something flickered across his face, an expression I couldn't quite read. He finished unwrapping his left hand slowly, deliberately, like he was buying time to figure out what to say. "You want me to hit you harder?" he finally asked, his tone careful. "I want you to treat me like you treat everyone else. Like I'm actually here to learn, not to be coddled." I was surprised by how much emotion was leaking into my voice. "I'm not fragile." Marcus looked at me for a long moment, and I felt suddenly exposed under that gaze, like he could see more than I wanted him to. "Okay," he said quietly. "Next session, I'll treat you like everyone else." I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt nervous. The next week, Tuesday evening, we gloved up again. Marcus's demeanor was different, more focused, more serious. We touched gloves, and immediately I could feel the change. He came at me with real intent, his punches still controlled but no longer pulled. That first solid jab that snapped my head back was a wake-up call. This was what I'd asked for. The round was brutal. Marcus pushed me backward, cut off the ring, made me work in ways I'd never had to before. I wasn't ready for this level, not even close. By the time Coach Dave called time, I was gasping. My arms felt like lead, and I was pretty sure I'd developed new bruises in places I didn't know could bruise. "Better?" Marcus asked, and there was something almost sad in his voice. I nodded, too winded to speak. But honestly, it wasn't better. It was educational, sure. Humbling, definitely. But something felt wrong about it, and I couldn't figure out what. We sparred like that for the next 2 weeks. Marcus, true to his word, treated me exactly like he treated everyone else. Professional, technical, and absolutely unforgiving of mistakes. I improved faster than I had in months. I learned to keep my hands up because if I didn't, I'd eat a jab. I learned to move my head because standing still meant getting tagged. I learned real boxing. But something else happened too. The easy warmth that had existed between us evaporated. Marcus was cordial, but distant. No more casual conversation while wrapping hands, no more encouraging smiles during drills. He'd show up, work with me with perfect technical precision, and then move on to his own training. It was exactly what I'd asked for, exactly what I'd demanded, and it felt terrible. I found myself watching him more during open gym time, trying to figure out what had changed. He was the same with everyone else, joking with the other fighters, offering tips, that magnetic smile lighting up his whole face. Just not with me, not anymore. It was Marcus's friend Tony who finally spelled it out for me. Tony was this stocky Italian guy who'd been boxing since he was 12 and had opinions about everything. We were both at the water fountain one evening, and he gestured toward Marcus, who was working the heavy bag with explosive combinations. "You know why he went easy on you at first, right?" Tony asked. I shrugged, drinking my water. "Man, you really are oblivious." Tony laughed, but not meanly. "Marcus likes you, like, really likes you. Everyone in the gym knows it, except apparently you." The water went down the wrong pipe, and I spent the next 30 seconds coughing. Tony waited patiently, grinning. "What?" I finally managed. "Come on, the guy practically lights up when you walk in. Why do you think Coach kept pairing you two? He was trying to help Marcus out, give him an excuse to spend time with you." Tony shook his head. "But Marcus didn't want to hurt you. Not just because you're a beginner, but because he's got it bad. Then you called him out on it, and now he's trying to prove he can be professional, keep his feelings out of it. Honestly, it's kind of painful to watch." I stood there, water bottle forgotten in my hand, as about 6 months of interactions suddenly rearranged themselves in my mind. The extra attention to my form, the way Marcus always seemed to know when I needed encouragement, how he'd linger after sessions talking about nothing in particular, The look on his face when I'd accused him of coddling me. Oh no. I'd been so caught up in my own issues, my need to prove I wasn't fragile, that I'd completely missed what was actually happening. And in pushing him away, in demanding he treat me like everyone else, I'd hurt him. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd come to boxing to learn to take a hit, and I'd landed the most devastating blow without even realizing it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every interaction with Marcus, seeing them through this new lens. The way his hand would linger on my shoulder when correcting my stance. How he'd always ask about my day, actually listening to my answers. The time he'd brought me sports tape because he'd noticed I was getting blisters from my hand wraps. These weren't the actions of just a training partner or even a friend. These were the actions of someone who cared deeply, and I'd been completely blind to it. The next evening, I showed up to the gym early. Marcus was already there, which wasn't unusual. He was always early. He was stretching in the corner, earbuds in, and I walked over before I could overthink it. He looked up when my shadow fell across him, pulling out one earbud. "Hey, can we talk?" I asked. "Outside?" Something cautious crossed his face, but he nodded. We walked out to the alley behind the gym, where the evening air was cool and the sounds of the city felt distant. "Tony told me," I said, because I'd never been good at subtle approaches, "about why you were holding back." Marcus's jaw tightened. Tony needs to learn to mind his own business. Maybe, but I'm glad he didn't. I took a breath, trying to organize thoughts that felt too big and complicated for words. I came to boxing because I was tired of being afraid of getting hurt, afraid of failing, afraid of being vulnerable. And then you were kind to me, and somehow that scared me more than any punch could. So I pushed you away. I made you into the problem instead of dealing with my own stuff. Marcus was quiet, watching me with those dark eyes that suddenly felt like they could see straight through me. "The thing is," I continued, my heart hammering, "I've been thinking about why it bothered me so much. Why I couldn't just accept that you were being nice. And I think it's because some part of me knew, some part of me felt how you looked at me, and it terrified me because I was starting to look at you the same way." "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Marcus's voice was careful, like he was afraid to hope. "I'm saying I've spent 6 months watching you move around that ring like poetry, and telling myself I was just appreciating the technique. I'm saying I bought new gym clothes because I wanted to look good when I knew you'd be there. I'm saying I've never been good at recognizing what I want until it's almost too late, but I'm trying to get better at it." I met his eyes. "I'm saying I'd like to take you to dinner, somewhere with no gloves, no headgear, just us." The smile that spread across Marcus's face was like sunrise, slow and warm and absolutely radiant. Yeah, if you're still interested in someone who's kind of an oblivious mess. I've been interested in you since the first week. When you showed up with color-coordinated wraps and spent 10 minutes making sure your gym bag was organized perfectly. Marcus stepped closer. "I like that you take things seriously. I like that you're thoughtful. I like that you push yourself, even when you're scared. I just didn't like hurting you." "You can hurt me a little," I said. "In the ring, I mean. I do actually need to learn." "How about this?" Marcus said, and his voice had dropped to something softer, more intimate. "In the ring, I'll train you properly, push you, but keep you safe. Outside the ring, I'll do my best not to hurt you at all. Deal?" "Deal." We stood there in that alley, the sounds of the gym filtering out through the walls, and Marcus reached out to touch my face gently, his calloused thumb brushing my cheek. "I'm going to kiss you now," he said, "if that's okay." I nodded, not trusting my voice, and then his lips were on mine, soft and sure, and tasting faintly of mint. It was nothing like boxing, no violence or impact, just this gentle pressure that somehow hit harder than any punch. When we pulled apart, I was breathless for entirely different reasons than usual. "So," Marcus said, grinning, "Friday night? There's this Ethiopian place in Fort Greene that's amazing." "Friday's perfect." We went back inside, and if everyone in the gym noticed that something had shifted between us, they were polite enough not to say anything. Coach Dave just gave me this knowing look and a small nod, like he'd been waiting for me to catch up. That Friday, Marcus picked me up in a car that was somehow even more meticulously clean than my apartment, and we went to dinner. We talked for 3 hours about everything and nothing. He told me about growing up in Atlanta, about his family, about how he'd started boxing because his dad had boxed. I told him about my control issues, my therapist's theories, my slowly developing theory that maybe I didn't need to have everything figured out. "You know what I think?" Marcus said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "I think you're exactly where you need to be, learning, growing, figuring it out as you go. That's not a weakness. That's just being human." 3 months later, we're still training together, but now it's different. Marcus pushes me in the ring, makes me work for every improvement, and I'm actually getting decent. But he also pulls me close afterward, kisses the bruises he's careful not to give me, and reminds me that strength isn't about never getting hurt. It's about being willing to step into the ring anyway, knowing you might take some hits, trusting that someone will be there to help you back up. I still take things too seriously sometimes. I still organize my gym bag with neurotic precision. But I'm learning that control isn't the opposite of vulnerability. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is let someone see you clearly, pull their punches or not, and trust that they'll treat your heart more carefully than your guard. And every time Marcus looks at me across the ring, right before we touch gloves, I see it. That moment of softness before we start, that reminder that we're in this together. He'll hit me just hard enough to make me better, and I'll do the same for him, and after we'll go home and be gentle with each other in all the ways that matter. Turns out, the best sparring partner isn't the one who goes easiest on you. It's the one who knows exactly how hard to push and when to pull you close instead. Total_char_. Count 16,847.